thing is this. This is really just such an extraordinary organization and day. I can't tell you how happy I am to be here. Super nervous because apparently it doesn't matter how long I speak in my career, I'll always be nervous, but so happy to be here. And this organization is such a big part of my heart. I'm one of the volunteer pro bono therapists in this organization, and they just do such amazing work. It's just such a huge honor to be here. Thank you, Rena. Okay, first, I have no idea how long I'm talking, but I'm just gonna talk and somebody will cut me off. Lori will cut me off when it's time to be cut off. The first thing I'm going to do today is talk some about why cancer is particularly hard to cope with, a little section I like to call things you do not need me to tell you. I'm also going to talk some about what the research says is helpful in doing that. And when I first spoke with BACC about coming to talk today, one idea we had was instead of me just standing up here and talking at you, that we might try a little bit of what we do with patients. And so that's the other thing that we're going to do. I'm going to talk about an intervention, this ACT intervention that Rena mentioned, and then we're going to try little tiny things. Is this going to change your life in the next 45 minutes? Probably not. But hopefully, I can give you teeny tiny little things that you can try in your life, whether you're a patient, a provider, a volunteer, a staff member, all of us struggle in the same ways. As Rena mentioned, I'm a professor and I'm a psychologist, and probably most important to me in terms of my professional identity is that I'm a cancer coach. I spend a lot of time with folks who have cancer and their families, and I also study and train people in this type of intervention that I'm going to describe today. Probably the most meaningful piece of information about me about this is I've never had cancer, so I don't know in my bones what this experience is. But I have struggled, and both my husband and my son have had cancer. So cancer is a huge part of my family's life and a big part of how I think about things day to day. I saw my first cancer patient in 2002, long before either my husband or my 14-year-old son got diagnosed with cancer. And I have been a psycho-oncologist for most of the last 20 years, exclusively. Okay, the last part of the first things first. You should have on your table a card. There should be a stack of them. On those cards, I want you to take one. Raise your hand up really high if you don't have enough on your table. You should. Oh, she's coming to you. The first thing that I want you to do is, and you can do this in code, like it's a vulnerable thing to think about something that you struggle with. So you don't have to write like every word of what the struggle is, but I want you to write down something, whatever came to your mind first, or whatever feels safe to write down in this public context. I want you to write down something that you struggle with, the thing that kind of gives you a stomach ache. It might be about cancer, it might be about a relationship, it might be about a fear or a regret, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. And you can totally write a code so that you don't have to write down a really vulnerable set of words. But everybody, volunteers, staff, patients, everybody, providers, everybody write down something that you struggle with. I want you to notice, while people are finishing, I have been doing trainings in this topic for almost 30 years, and I've never had anybody who doesn't have something to write down. there is a very universal, ubiquitous experience of being human that while we kind of expect that we should not struggle, we do. Okay, everybody got something written down? Everybody's got a card? You're going to need the card later, so hold on to it. Don't burn it. Okay, now I'm going to tell you some things you don't need me to tell you. Cancer is tough. Having cancer is tough. Being diagnosed with cancer is tough. Being treated for cancer is tough. Not being treated for cancer is tough. Getting through the treatment, getting through the experience of it is not only difficult medically, it's extraordinarily difficult emotionally. Depending on how they measure it and what study you look at, somewhere between about 1/3 and 2/3 of people who are diagnosed with cancer experience what psychologists like to call significant emotional distress. And significant emotional distress isn't just like we all have distress. This is distress that really gets in the way for you. And that distress, again, you don't need me to tell you, looks different at different parts of the process. There is the distress that is associated with getting a diagnosis and whether you're going to get the diagnosis and how you get the diagnosis. There is the distress that's associated with waiting for treatment to start if you're going to be treated and wondering what that's going to be like. There is the distress that's associated with the actual treatments of cancer, whether that's chemo, radiation, surgery, any targeted treatments. All of the treatments have their own psychological stress that's associated with them. And then if you are a person who gets to complete treatment, there is the distress that happens after. If you are a person who doesn't complete treatment or stops treatment for a while, knowing it will be back, there is the stress associated with that. So at every point, there are unique stressors and unique coping skills that go along with that. But all of those stages can involve this significant emotional distress that I was talking about. The risk factors for having it be super hard are the type and stage of cancer. Ovarian and breast tend to be the ones that are associated with more distress. Younger age, being female, and not surprisingly, being single. All of those things, according to the literature, make coping with cancer harder. When people have this particular type of significant emotional distress, we see role dysfunction. Not the kind of role dysfunction that happens with having cancer, because your role is disrupted when you are diagnosed with or treated for cancer. But beyond that, your role is more disrupted when you have this significant distress. People tend to report a negative self-perception. We believe that it is something about us. There is something significantly distinct about us in this process that is not good. More disruptions in daily life. You're not visiting friends. You're not going for a walk. You're not doing even the things that you might be able to pull off in the context of your cancer. And of course, it's associated with more difficult treatment emotions. More emotions that you don't want. Sadness, grief, terror. Notably, the most important emotions that we see in this process that are common for people who are struggling, and part of the reason why people are struggling, is high levels of uncertainty, helplessness, and loneliness. There is just so much helplessness that goes with this experience for people that is isolating, even when you've got all of the people in the world. And we know that significant emotional distress is mitigated by better social support and better coping strategies. But it's really, it's one thing for researchers to say that helps, but when you're in the trenches of it, it's difficult to get good social support because people don't understand, or you may experience what many cancer patients experience, which is some people respond amazingly, and other people who you were certain would be great support have disappeared. And so there are elements of this process for people that make getting social support harder. So how to get real social support and how to engage real coping skills that can help with this kind of prolonged task is the challenge. So I'm going to tell you some about this intervention that we use with people with cancer, and I'll kind of walk through it a little bit at a time. The main way I would describe it is that it's a mindfulness-based intervention. What I'm doing today isn't an intervention, even though I had you write down something difficult on your card. As Rena said, this should not be construed as medical advice or psychological advice in this case. We call it acceptance and commitment training in a context like this. But the focus of this is to teach people kind of teeny tiny little skills to help them make meaningful changes in their life using mindfulness, using awareness. Lots of people are sort of afraid of mindfulness or awareness because they imagine themselves having to like sit on a cushion and meditate in silence for long periods of time. That's not what we'll be doing. Some basic premises of this intervention are that no matter what your thoughts and feelings are, they're not the problem. I will tell you, this morning, when I was coming here, I lost my keys. I couldn't find them. And I needed to get in the car like 5 minutes ago, and I couldn't find my keys. And my little cortisol spiked to the ceiling, and I was like, oh, where's the keys? Where's the keys? I'm so stressed. Oh, just need the keys. I gotta go. I'm gonna be late, and I have to talk, and I already am nervous. And so that experience, I would have said, like, this is bad stress. I shouldn't be having stress. But right behind it came, oh my God, Jen, you always do this. What is wrong with you? How can you be so disorganized? How can you not have figured this out? Look at you, at your age, how are you still losing your keys? Right? That thought that follows right behind it, it's different than the experience of the stress, which I was already judging and evaluating as bad. Like, oh, this bad stress. Stress is bad for me. I know that. And then also like, oh my gosh. So in ACT, neither the stress nor the like diatribe that my little mind gave me about it is bad. Neither one of them is. It's how we respond. In the moment of having distress and worry about not being able to make it here, my mind was like, you're bad. This was a bad thing to do. And sometimes the attempts that we make to control those feelings and thoughts actually make things worse, actually make it harder to kind of live the life that we want to live, right? Like I didn't do it, obviously, but you can imagine a situation where I'd be like, forget it, I'm just not going. I am hugely passionate about helping people with cancer. I love this organization. I was delighted when they asked me to do this talk. I could have controlled all of my negative thoughts and feelings by just not saying yes or not coming, especially when I lost my keys. But that reduces my vitality. So according to ACT, it's not the stress, not the problem. It's not even the negative thoughts that followed the stress that's the problem. It's the things that we do to try to control those, the ways that we make our life smaller so that we don't have to experience negative things. And then the last premise is we can develop more intentional responses, even in the context of really scary stuff like cancer, even in the context of facing death even in the context of having a negative scan, a scan that produces results that you don't want. All of these experiences, we can move towards this more intentional behavior. I got in a different car, because I never did find my keys. I got in my husband's car and came here because it mattered. And so that's what we talk about in ACT as kind of flexibly moving towards our values. Moving towards things that matter, even when you're struggling with the stuff on the inside. It's a little bit like this. If you have all the scary stuff that you are struggling with, or the hard stuff, or the complicated relationship stuff, or the hurt feelings, pain, whatever it is that you're struggling with in your left hand, one of the things that we do is we get kind of hyper-focused on this left hand. Whatever you wrote down on your card, if that's in your left hand, how we go through our life is that we're very worried about what's happening in our left hand. I'll tell you, like, I was not thinking about much except for I'm stressed, I shouldn't be stressed, stress is bad, I'm gonna be late, oh, what am I doing? Oh, you always do this. All that stuff is right here. And it draws our attention. We are like neurologically designed to pay attention to those negative experiences and try to like micromanage them. So what ACT does is it says, there's this other hand over here. And this hand is kind of your life as you want to be in it. How you want to be if you weren't worrying about this hand all the time. What would you want to be? And so we're not going to change any of the content in this hand. I'm so sorry. But we're going to definitely focus instead a little bit on this hand. That'll make more sense later. Probably doesn't make sense now. But in ACT, I'm going to briefly describe how we think we get stuck. First one is getting kind of caught up in the content of our thoughts instead of noticing that they are thoughts. This is a big thing that we do. We are 15 miles down the road about what could happen with this scan coming up or what's wrong with us as a human before we even notice that we're having thoughts. So one of the first thing that we do that gets us stuck is we don't even notice that we're having thoughts. Like I said, my thoughts today were like, why are you always do this, Jen? What's wrong with you, Jen? Before I didn't say, oh, look, I'm having some thoughts about how I am as a person. I was very caught in the content of them. The other thing that we do that gets us stuck is we live in the past and in the future. If you don't believe me, if you're a patient, think about how much time you spend thinking about what might happen next with your cancer. And whether you're a patient or not, think about how much time you spend thinking about what you could have done differently in all kinds of domains. The next thing that we do is that we hold on to who we are, right? Immediately where my mind went was like, Jen, this is who you are. You are a person who loses her keys. This is my defining characteristic, apparently. I'm not a mom, I'm not a psychologist, nope. I'm a person who loses her keys. We hold on to things and they're not all necessarily bad things. How many people think of themselves, I don't know if you'll raise your hand if I ask this, but I'm going to ask it anyways. How many people think of yourself as a nice person? Look at all those hands. Yay. I'm sure you are wonderfully nice people. But think about all of the millions of ways that can hold you back in your life, having that understanding about yourself. Right? The next one is avoiding all of the thoughts, feelings, experiences that we don't like, trying to avoid them, trying to shut them down. Even I've studied this for 30 years, and I was like, I shouldn't be stressed. Like, I know better than that. And we do that. That's an automatic response. Don't think about the future. Don't think about what could happen. Don't think about the bad stuff. And remember, like, we avoid things that we judge as bad, even when it is our life. And how many people have imagined a life that didn't have cancer and then compared their actual life to that imaginary life and then decided that this life is kind of lacking? Right? That's not a real life where you don't have cancer or haven't had cancer. But we can imagine an imaginary life where we're not struggling, and then this one seems bad, and we judge it, and then what we like to do as human beings is try to avoid things that we judge. Okay, the fifth one is not attending to our values. Values is a big word in ACT, and if I can get myself to shut up a little bit, we're going to do some stuff related to values, because this is my favorite part of ACT. But values in ACT is, who do you want to be? And we don't think about that because we're busy micromanaging our thoughts and feelings. And then the last one is finding ways to kind of check out a little bit from our difficult experiences, whatever that looks like for you. We all do different versions of that. I'm a college professor, so this is what I see a lot, is kids this age doing this, but there's lots of versions of how we just kind of shift away from our difficult experiences. So because we think there's these kind of 6 processes for how people get stuck, then ACT targets each of these different pieces with trying something different, with a different skill. First skill, instead of living in the future and the past, we build teeny tiny skills for being able to come back to the present, which I will practice with you in a minute. Another one is noticing the process of thinking instead of the content. Kind of teaching this little skill for being able to say, oh, look, I'm having the thought that I always lose my keys. I noticed that thought. Wow, that's a loud thought that I was having this morning. Developing a more flexible sense of ourself, who we are, and kind of how to be in the world with these experiences in a way that we're not so locked in some identity that we have created for ourselves, in order to be able to have difficult experiences when they show up without needing to control them, without needing to avoid them, without needing to cut them off, without needing to eliminate them, so that we then have more flexibility to think about who we actually want to be in terms of our values, and then to move in those directions. And to this is ultimately an intervention that involves taking actual steps, not just thinking about all of this, which is why you have a card in front of you, because I want us to think about it in terms of actual steps. So in other words, instead of changing our experiences, we're going to try to change our response to our experiences in lots of different ways. So this isn't a talk that's specifically about the research in ACT, but let me just say it's a very evidence-based approach. They've done lots and lots of big studies. I've done some of them, but there's been many, many more done. In general, it seems like it's better than nothing. It's hard to say with psychotherapy sometimes, but generally it contributes to less distress. They study this in everything from math anxiety to kind of like OCD, PTSD, depressive symptoms, all the way up to all the different types of medical disorders that people can have. In cancer specifically, the studies that we've done, and some of these I've done with my colleague Diane Chimay when we were at UCSF. We've done studies that show a reduction in distress, improved quality of life, reduced anxiety and depression, which is interesting because in ACT we don't really say that feeling anxious is bad or feeling depressed is bad, but rather that those are experiences that we all have sometimes. And we do see an increase in psychological flexibility, and that includes folks with advanced cancer. Okay, that's a lot of me talking, so let's try some stuff. First, we're going to come to the present. This skill is not in order to feel relaxed. It is not in order to not have stress. It is actually just to have one small thing that you can do when you're stuck. And the skill of coming to the present involves really coming into this moment that you're actually in. So right now, if you're willing, close your eyes for a second. I promise I won't make you do a big meditation. If you don't feel comfortable closing your eyes in a group of a whole bunch of people, then just find a spot on the floor to look at and soften your gaze. But right now, I want you to notice what your body feels like. Where you are and what you're doing. This is the first step out of the constant chatter of your mind, is to come into your body. Some people do that by noticing their breath, but it doesn't have to be your breath. I like to feel my sit bones, because you can only feel your sit bones from this moment that you're actually in. Right now, there's nowhere else you need to be. There's nothing else you need to be doing. This moment right here, I want you to check and see if you're safe. See if anything is harming you. Maybe you don't like this kind of activity and that's harming you, but otherwise, just check this moment. Notice your body in the chair you're in. Maybe notice the outline of where your body touches the chair and the floor, as though it's like being drawn with a big crayon. And just notice what that's like right now, in this moment. And when you're ready, you can open up your eyes. Hi, welcome back. That experience is so simple. It's not going to change your life. But I will say that, I'll just say in terms of my own experience, when my teenage son was diagnosed with cancer and we were given a pretty scary prognosis at one point, and it was very easy for my mind to jump very far into a future that hadn't happened yet. Many times a day for a while, I just had to check what was actually happening. And this was my favorite of all of the skills that I know from this work, was to check, what's he doing right now? Which, sadly, almost always the answer was playing video games. But in that moment is the only place you can check to see if you are safe. Okay, when might this be useful? One, when you've jumped ahead of the data, which happens in scanxiety a lot, that you're very far down the road towards things that have not happened yet. And it is sometimes helpful in that moment to wiggle your toes or to feel your sit bones and come back into the present. When you're living in a future that hasn't happened, and when you're comparing this life to that imaginary life that I mentioned. Okay, next skill. I promise you don't have to close your eyes for this one. We're going to practice just noticing the process of thinking rather than the content for 1 second. So a second ago, you checked the chair you were sitting in and what your body felt like sitting in it. Now I want you to think about chairs. I want you to have the thought, this is the best chair I've ever sat in. I want you to have the thought, this is the worst chair I've ever sat in. I want you to think about the chairs at your dining room table. I want you to think about your favorite chair. If you've got a least favorite chair, or one that comes to mind, I want you to think about your least favorite chair. What you just did is think about the content of chairs, and you can get climbed into the content. How many people could picture their dining room chair at home? Yeah, you can get in that content. Now I want you to notice that you sitting here in this chair had a thought about that chair. And you had a thought about this chair, because I made you have a thought about this chair. That process of thinking, we don't do. We just think, and we get lost in the content of the thoughts. But notice that you can notice that you're having a thought. When it might be useful to have that skill is when we're bringing our judgment to the situation that we're in. When we're saying, this is bad. Because sometimes it's not. Or when it feels like it's intolerable. Noticing, oh, I'm having the thought that this is intolerable. I'm having the thought that I can't handle this. I'm having the thought that I won't be able to handle it if X happens. We do this a lot. Okay, last skill. In this one, we're going to clarify your values. And what do we mean by values? It's a weird word because it's got these connotations of like family values from the 80s. I don't mean that. I mean, how do you really want to be on your best day? You, specifically. Not what your parents want you to be or your partner wants you to be or your kids want you to be. You. How do you want to be in your life if you were just being true, completely true to yourself? And we tend to define this in terms of relationships. What kind of parent do you want to be? What kind of partner do you want to be? What kind of sibling do you want to be? What kind of friend do you want to be? What kind of employee do you want to be? What kind of volunteer do you want to be on your best day? And what that is different for everybody. We can't define that for you. But we can, part of what we do in ACT is help people think about this, because it's not something we think about all the time. And part of the context of cancer, and why I think this is a particularly good fit for cancer, is that there's so many things that you don't have control over. including all the thoughts and feelings that come with it. But you have a lot of control over how you show up. You might not be able to show up physically in all the ways that you would want to all the time, but you have a lot of control over how you are. And that's the piece that we want to help people define so that they can start to shift what they do in their day. I'll give you an example of what I mean by this. When I think about how I want to be as a partner, I've been married for 500 million years. And when I think about how I want to be as a partner, I have my little list that comes to my mind. I've been defining this the whole 500 million years I've been married to this guy. And on my list always is the word thoughtful. Now, my partner likes to have our bed made. I don't care at all if the bed's made. Nobody's going to see it, and we're just going to mess it up. It's like 87th on my to-do list for the day. That seems like not a good use of my time. So but when I make my little list for myself, because I always have the word thoughtful, if I'm the last person out of the bed, I try to remember to make it. But I don't make it for him. This is an important point because I think women are socialized to do things for other people. That is what we are taught from a pretty young age. But I don't make the bed for him. I make it so that at the end of the day, I can be like, I was thoughtful today. It turns out it doesn't matter if he notices. It definitely doesn't matter if he thanks me. It's not for him. It's for me. It's for me to be a little bit truer to who I want to be as a person. So this is what we mean by your values. So now, on the other side of your card, I want you to write down a couple of things that you want to be. Don't pretend to do it, really do it. These are just some. You could have anything you want, but it should be focused on you, not on other people. No fair writing what you want your partner to be. You have to write what is true for you. How do you want to show up in your relationships, in your life, in your job, in your friendships? Just a couple of adjectives about what's most meaningful for you. If you're having trouble thinking of something, how do you want to be as a mom, as a sister, as a partner, as a daughter, if that's applicable, as a friend, what comes to mind? When I write this, it's always like the same stuff across all the different categories of my life. Like, I want to, and that's part of why I'm here. As I mentioned, I get kind of nervous presenting. This matters, and so it matters to do it even when it feels nervous because of my values. Okay. So now, I want you to think about how you might do that just a little tiny bit in your life. What's one thing that you could do, preferably something you're not already doing, but it's okay if it's something you're already doing, that would allow you to live this value in your life? Because this is what you have control over. You don't always have control over how you feel, but you have a lot of control over how you show up. I especially want you to think about anything that you could do today at the conference that would be consistent with your values. In this amazing space, in this amazing organization, what could you do that at the end of the day today, you would be patting yourself on the shoulder saying, I showed up in a way that was really cool today. And this is something that is designed to be a support even on hard days. I have sat with patients in the hardest of hard moments, including right up to the end of people's lives, where when they think about their values and how they want to show up, they are able to do something in support of that, no matter what is going on. So this might be useful when you feel like your life is just cancer, because this is what happens, right? People lean into you when you're sick, and then you get used to that, and you stop living your own friend values. You stop being the kind of friend you want to be. When you've lost your vitality, when you have relationships that matter, when you want to have relationships that matter, maybe you're feeling disconnected. This is a way to do something about that. Okay, they're going to kick me off the stage in a minute. So let me sum it up. Come back to the present. Notice your thoughts are thoughts. And take steps towards your values. Super easy, right? Okay. If you want more related to this, first and most importantly, I want to acknowledge my amazing friend, Anne Ravello, sitting right there, who is the person who leads the Exhale group at BACC, which is based on ACT and has a lot of these principles. So if you have not been part of the Exhale group, that is an amazing resource. If the Exhale group is not a fit for you, or you have other reasons why, there's other books. There's a cancer, specifically ACT and cancer book, not written by me, written by somebody else in Australia, that people really like. And then I also put in the middle, The Happiness Trap is probably the most popular book about ACT that's out there in the world. There's lots of books out there in the world. And as Rena mentioned, I've written some of them too. But I think the Happiness Trap is probably the book, if you're curious about what I've been talking about today, that has the kind of easiest to understand description of it. Okay. Oh, she said 1 minute. There you go. Look at that. I timed it perfectly. Fantastic. So there, mind, and all your beliefs about what you would do. Okay. Questions. Do I have time for questions, or is that okay? Okay. Now I can say, do you have questions? Ask it. Oh.
Hello. Thank you for your presentation. It came at the right time. And quick thing on your list, please add patience. I think we all need patience.
Yes. Oh, that's true. This one should have patience on it, huh? This one. Yes, patience. Fabulous. Thank you for your nice comment. Other questions? It's your chance. Ask questions. Yeah.
How do you silence the super loud thoughts? Because anxiety is inevitable, right?
Wait, can you say it again?
How do you silence the super loud thoughts? Since anxiety is inevitable in day-to-day?
Yeah. So the question is, how do you silence super loud thoughts since anxiety is kind of inevitable in the day-to-day? So from an ACT perspective, we might say you don't. And not because you can't, although I also think you probably can't, but also because a whole different way to respond to those thoughts might be, oh, hi, thought. Hi, old friend. How you doing? Look at that. And that's not a satisfying answer. But remember, what happens is we have distress or a difficult thought or a catastrophic thought, like something terrible is going to happen. And what happens is that thought gets really big and loud and, oh my gosh, it's terrible. Oh my gosh, this is awful. I'm never going to recover from this. And then we find some way to try to shut it off. You know, we drink alcohol, we try not to think about it, we smash ourselves in the head with a hammer, something to kind of turn that voice off. But what we don't realize then, because we do that, is that if we just hung out a little bit longer with it, eventually you're going to go have a sandwich. Like, it's not going to stay forever. And that, it feels like it is, but, you know, experiment with it for yourself. Don't trust me, but if you have a really loud thought, see what happens if you just hang out and don't do anything, because chances are it's just not getting the chance to come back down because we're trying to find a way out of it at the top. And some of the ways that we try to get out of it are pretty destructive. So sometimes if we just let it ride, it doesn't destroy us, even though we think it will. Okay, last question. Yeah.
So do you mean when you, oh, thank you. So do you mean when you have the thought, don't make a judgment on it, just say, okay, that's my thought right now. Let me just pause.
Yeah, try that. Try that. If you have, like I said, my very first thought was like, Jen, you always do this. You always lose your keys. You're such a blah, 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 blah. Like, again, that's a trivial example, but what I'm proposing as a possibility is, if nothing else is working, you might as well try saying, look at that thought. There's that thought. And then just waiting and seeing what happens. Instead of like, well, let me blow up this relationship to try to not have this thought anymore, which sometimes we do. Yeah. Okay, they're going to take me off with a hook. Thank you so much for being here.